It is 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And if we have some people join on, no big deal. And I have a couple of agents in the room, right? Yes, ma'am. So even though I've got my back turned to you two, I want to hear you talk. So we're on session number 2, pages 47 through 65 or so, right? And this chapter was about the myth understandings. I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to go through some of the pages here as you start on page 47. And so a couple of the ahas I had, and you guys pop in and say something if you want to. So what I loved on page 47, the 6-month myth understandings between you and high achievement. This chapter to me is talking about getting in our own way of our success. And right there in the first couple of sentences, he says, fears are educated into us and can, if we wish, be educated out. So I thought, wow, there's so much that we have preconceived notions of that, especially in this business, I find for me still true after 15 years. And he says in here that they represent the core activities that if you're going to achieve at a high level, there's some core activities that must be consistently done. And he's talking about your actions surrounding your thoughts, kind of. And then on page 48 at the bottom paragraph, he says, this chapter is really about fear. So that's what he's talking about here is the fears that we face. So I feel like my back's to you two. What do you think back there? Anything so far?
What I had was, it's about learning to look past your fears to the truth of the situation. That was what jumped
Thank
out.
you, you too. Sorry.
she's talking to the bank.
Happy banking.
So Claire is saying, say that again, Claire.
It's about learning to look past your fears to the truth of the situation. That's what jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on page 49, where you can listen to this book audio, but where we get the diagrams, the 6 misunderstandings. The number 1 myth, I can't do it. Number 2, it can't be done in my market. Number 3, it would take too much time and effort. Number 4, it's too risky, I'll lose money. Number 5, my clients will only work with me, only I can deliver quality service. And number 6, having a goal and not fully realizing it is a negative thing. So then he goes on to start with myth number 1, I can't do it. Anybody have some ahas around this one?
If you keep telling yourself that, you're absolutely right. You can't do it.
Well, it's like if you say you can do it or you say you can't do it, you're right. Either one. And right. I love that he's talking about your potential. So he asks you, or he asks someone in this part of the book, what is your ultimate potential? And your mind will set this limiting immediately, this ceiling of what you know so far. And you have no idea what your ultimate potential is, right? So he's
right.
I
found it interesting that he said something when he was talking to that guy, like, well, that's just unrealistic. And he said, but who am I to point out people in the class saying, you can do it, you cannot, you can do it, you cannot. I mean, who is anybody to tell you that you're not, what you're, like you said, what is your potential? And who am I to tell you that you can't get there?
Well, and like I'll hear this, especially from new agents when they're doing business planning and they have some, kind of some dreams of who they could be. And yet the fear is, well, I don't want to be unrealistic and get disappointed. And so I'd rather set some kind of realistic goal. And they don't know what they don't know. You can say, well, how would you know if it's realistic or not? What if we showed you the most successful person on earth? Would that mean you could do it too? It's always our own limitations. The thing he says on page 51, you don't need that kind of non-productive self-talk going on in your head.
Right.
And I will tell you that I struggle with that. What about you guys?
I would agree.
You ever have non-productive self-talk going on in your head?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I love, how he has in the book, different millionaire real estate agents will comment there. So this one on the bottom of 51, or it's a girl, she sold 60 million. And she says, I had no people skills, no sales skills, no business experience. but I was determined to make it. So that's, you know, that's so amazing. And then he goes on the next page to talk about the miracle mile, which most of us realize or have heard that, you know, nobody could run the distance in the 4 minutes until someone did, and then so many people after that did. So I think to look for examples of success is a neat action item to do. Find somebody who has been in business as long as you have been, who's kicking it. Anybody else have anything on that part? Donna, are you on here? I think she must be on mute. Okay, so we'll go into the second one. It can't be done in my market. What do you guys think about that?
It's already being done.
Well, we see examples of that, right? We're the #1 company, and we see examples of high producing. So that part is kind of nice because we do see some of that. And even then, Gary will say, we still set our business plans not based on some other people, because say you saw the most successful agent you know, you might say some kind of beliefs that, will they have a team? Will they're older? Will they had more money? You know, whatever you come up with in your self-talk about how they could do it, but you couldn't. And then he goes on down in this page to say that he knows a lot of tremendously talented agents who will achieve far less than they're capable of because they're stuck on a 2 or 3 listing per month business plan. And I was like, I didn't even have a 2 or 3 listing a month business plan. You know, maybe I'm going to get a listing business plan. So setting the business plan to be higher when we talk about business planning, man, then figuring out how to get that business plan done, I think we'll get through that as we go through the book. But he goes, if you believe that you can make it and your competition does not believe they can, who's going to be ahead, right? So it can't be done in our market. What's nice with Keller Williams, I think, is we have data and examples from all over the country, from every market, and we don't have to guess. We can see success leaves clues and all of that. So let's go to third myth understanding. It would take too much time and effort. So this is going to be that dirty little time management situation. I see Allie came in. Let me scoot over. I feel like I'm going the wrong way. Pat's in, and Allie Hardy, I see you over there, Jana Marks. So we're on. Well, I'm just in the camera up here. So somebody talk to me a little bit about this. It would take too much time and effort, and I would lose my freedom.
Oh, that's very wrong.
I have a little star here by people have lived before us, and the highly successful ones have proven this to be complete and total myth. They understand you could put in 50-hour work weeks and make $1,000 a year, or 50-hour work weeks and make $1 million a year. Still, others understand they could put in 50 hours a week and experience no limits to their income and earning potential. I'm like, I know it's true, and yet I don't ever quite get my mind on it, you guys. So,
Well, I was told that if you spend 40 hours on real estate, not just in real estate, but if you actually work at it 40 hours a week, and when I started, I was paying a babysitter to work all day, so I had to have some benefit. I had to have some results at the end of the week. So that was my goal. And I think if you have those goals, you have to put in that 40 hours and not at the water cooler or in the coffee room or whatever. You have to actually do that prospecting.
well, and so what you're saying is you've got to spend the time efficiently.
Right.
You know, you got to show up first of all, and then you have to be purposeful about it. Hold on, I'm turning my page. So the other part of this that I kind of underlined is on your myths and truths there on page 56. You know, I'm so guilty of this. Activity means productivity. So you're so busy, but what are you actually getting done? I mean, it's just awful. Efficiency equals effectiveness. More discipline means less freedom when it's actually the opposite of that. more disciplined you are during the time you are working, the more freedom you get. So down there at the bottom, he goes, almost every millionaire real estate agent we interviewed understood how to be purposeful, focused, and extremely effective with their time. I don't know, Donna Story, are you still on mute? She hasn't said anything so far today, but she's really good at the time management training. How do you guys feel about being purposeful, focused?
I like how whenever you maintain your discipline and your focus, at the bottom it says, you actually earn back your time. For so long, if you continue to do what they tell you to do, and you continue to do
It's like the activity over time will give you time back. Donna, is that you making all that noise? Could be Cindy. Okay, so what about if it's too risky to lose money? What did you guys think about that one?
How are you? I'm running in without my hair done or anything.
Who's talking to us, Donna?
I have an appointment at 9 to get it done.
Are you talking to us?
No.
Cindy. Okay, so what do you guys think? If you ever hear like Keller Williams speech, we'll say red light, green light on your spending. So that comes straight from this part of the book where Gary recommends that you hold your investments accountable to their return. So he talks about basically being afraid that you can't afford something, which will all be there at various times. I don't have the money to hire an assistant. I don't have the money to buy postcards or, whatever it is. And yet that's a limiting belief in that sometimes you can't afford not to invest in your business. And what were your guys' thoughts on that part?
I kind of like the fact that he talks about once you do make the original investment, that you need to sit back and wait to see how, basically what it brings you before you just start throwing money at it repeatedly. See what's, I guess to me it seems like he's saying, why don't you see what works for you before you proceed from that point?
Well, and so when he talks about red light, green light later, it has to do with the percentage of your income. So not spending money that you don't have, first of all. And then let's say you're on that cusp of, I've got some money, or I really know I need to invest, and what am I going to invest it in? Instead of just going because you got a call and they said they've got some leads for you to buy or whatever it is that you might decide to spend money on, spend a little bit of money, see what your returns are, then add to it over time. And he says down there, kind of at the bottom of this myth there on page 59, the difference between costs and investments, playing red light, green light, add costs incrementally, hold them accountable to incremental gains, and only then move forward. Valuation, engagement, and patience. And I think that's kind of like what Pat said, working. Donna Story's in the back of the room now. What Pat was saying was, being purposeful and engagement, evaluating what you're doing with your time and your money. What do you think, Donna Story?
You just have to have the money to invest and put something back each closing, each time, each month.
What about pre-close?
She said,
Pre-closing.
pre-closing, spending the money, not always a good idea.
You still got to spend some money to make money.
Well, and he starts talking about when you hire leverage, but if you don't have that income yet, like we said last chapter, it's always that you've got to have the leads, you've got to have the listings, and then you get to the point to where you can afford the leverage. And the book is really about thinking with that end in mind from the beginning. So when you're looking at what am I going to spend money back, you've got to have a closing first. And then when you have one, either put money back or invest with a purpose and a plan and thoughts. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. My clients will only work with me, only I can deliver quality service. Somebody speak to that.
Doesn't look like it's true. It says your clients aren't loyal to you, they are loyal to the standards you represent.
So think about what your standards are. Give an example of what a standard is.
Communication.
So communication on how quickly you would answer, like Claire was going through yesterday with an example of someone who wouldn't communicate back, another agent. She knows that that's the opposite of how she wants to be. She answers communications quickly with clients and with other agents. And so then, you know, what if you guys hear the surveys every year, the biggest complaint we get from customers is that we don't communicate enough. Well, let's say that you wanted to talk to your client about what to expect in the inspection process or something. Are you really the only one who could deliver that information? Or can you let go of control at some point and expect somebody could have that conversation as well as you could? It's a little bit about the control freak nature that we have. Like, Gail Kane, you're back there. I see you. They're chit-chatting. What do you think about when you let somebody else do the job that holds standards to your name? Like when you have a buyer's agent or you have a admin person. It's hard to let go of control, don't you think?
It's tough.
I mean, isn't that a struggle to believe somebody else is going to follow up and do a good job and represent you?
And if you have the people that are the way you are, it's sort of easy to push it to them.
You can't.
You got to scoot up
say,
here.
do it.
Oh, scoot back up.
Scoot up a
You
little.
can't just say,
Go do it.
and take care of this file and walk away, because at the end of the day, who are they going to come back to?
And they have to learn it. They have to sit there and listen to us and
Own it.
master it.
So you'll find yourself, like, say you were going to hire the transaction coordinator to give you some time back so that you could go sell more houses. But your fear inside of you is, oh no, I could not be not in control of my entire contract process. You know, we'll have those thoughts, don't you guys think? And go, oh, yeah, no, I don't trust, right? It's a lack of trust of someone else to take care of your clients the way you want to. And it's really just holding them to the standard of, here's my expectation. The contract will be at the closing or at the title company within, 3 hours of when we receive it or whatever your standard is. Then you might find that you actually get things done more efficiently than less.
Transaction coordinators, the key.
I mean, that's a big one, don't you think?
Not a buyer's agent, not a listing agent, but a good transaction coordinator that, like Tiffany, that knows it in and out, that, and then she trains you on what she's needing. So. And
on not letting things fall through the cracks, that your intentions are to have the standards. The standards are hard to put in place. You do them kind of over and over and over. You get better all the time.
I think getting bogged down and whenever you're ready to have a transaction coordinator assist you, it's really easy to get bogged down with that and not doing what you're supposed to do in that rainmaking position. It's easy to, oh, I can't do that because I have to make sure all these steps in the contract get done below. That would be.
Yeah, and I find myself with lots of excuses all the time and reasons that I can't lead generate because I'm so busy doing who knows what. Right. Okay, so 5th myth understanding, my clients will only work with me, only I can deliver quality service.
Yeah.
Well, we know it's a myth. So the truth, your clients are not loyal to you, they are loyal to the standards you represent. So it's really the same concept. On page 60, I put a little star by the second paragraph because Gary says, please hear me and hear me well. If you get nothing else out of this book, please consider this point. Whatever service you provide, as specialized as they may be, can be duplicated through the right people implementing systems to achieve standards you approve. That is a very big aha that you'll come back to as you start to get to a point to where you leverage. Whatever you think you are best at, somebody else could do as well as you.
Well, isn't it like taking your weaknesses and having someone else do it for you?
That, and say you thought you were a fantastic listing agent or you delivered an amazing presentation. Could that be duplicatable with the person who was a talented person who you could teach to say it like you say it?
Yes.
Right.
your business, yes.
So the thing is when we're not to that level, like Donna's at that level, the first time you think about using someone, you'll have these big fears and limitations holding you back, saying, no, I better be the one to do that. So that's a really big one to get past. It says most successful real estate agents, so this is talking about successful real estate agents, not even unsuccessful ones, but successful ones, hold themselves to unwritten personal standards, but they're not necessarily able to articulate them. They all seem to be able to instantly recognize the moment the standards have not been reached. So like when we see an agent who we think is terrible, we can recognize that. Do we recognize whenever we have somebody in our world that's amazing?
Yes.
Donna says yes.
Well, it's long been, I don't think it's a myth, it's long been held that good agents always have to do the work of both agents.
Well, but the myth is that it doesn't have to only be you. You could have
Yes.
someone in your world that could do it as well as you. Somebody can do it as well as you.
So you're just gonna have to feel that you get it done, yes, whatever it takes.
Well, your first thing is to define the standards that at the end of the day you won't allow anything less. And then at some point you could leverage it to someone. It says if it can be defined and have standards attached to it, it can be delegated. So he's really just talking about delegation. And then what about myth understanding number 6? Somebody talk about having a goal and not reaching it.
What you saying?
Having a goal and not reaching it.
We're not doing the tasks that we should be doing.
Well, he's just talking about failing forward. He's talking about that it's not bad to have a goal and not reach it.
Keep trying.
Failure's not the end of the world. It's
You look
a
back.
learning.
Hey, that's right. Learning. Yeah, you learn from your failures and go forward.
Well, he gives the example of President Abraham Lincoln. He gives the example of Thomas Edison. You know, sometimes you'll hear examples of sports figures. Like I was looking at that gymnast that got a 10 on her routine. How many times did she fall? How many times did she not feel like going in again? And how many times did she fear that she wouldn't do well? And so setting the goal to be an Olympian or a high producing agent or whatever your dreams are, to hold yourself back by being fear of not making them, kind of goes back to that realistic one where who knows what you could do.
Or even knowing that if I do achieve the goal, what's next? And you don't even want to take that next step forward because, you know, the fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. And he says, if you're afraid of failure, then you'll avoid some of the challenges. So I had one of my coaches tell me, I had to go back and read John Maxwell, Fear of Failure, that it's not there's not two different directions, failure or success. It's one direction towards success and lots of failures along that path. Lots of picking yourself up and getting back in.
I like how he says, Abraham Lincoln had that quote, you can't fail unless you quit. So that was
I mean, whenever I get in those moments of wanting to quit and I have to get myself back out, and I've done that a million times over this career, you've got to get back to this and say, the only difference in making it, not making it, is quitting.
Work on your affirmations with that.
Well, and then he goes into affirmations next.
Positive affirmation right there.
Mm-hmm.
You may need to take a breath back before going forward with yourself, but work on, make your affirmations on that.
So the affirmation part, I have heard, and I didn't realize it was from this part of the book, if it is to be, it's up to me. If it is to be, it's up to me. If it is to be, it's up to me. And then he goes on to say, if it is to be, it will be me. So he gets even a little more aggressive with that affirmation. I really think we should do a whole session on affirmations. There's so much good stuff about that. That he just says that your ability to keep moving, make progress, and learn as you go. Anybody else have any ahas on affirmation on that part?
You can't get anywhere if you never start.
You can't get anywhere if you never start.
Yeah. Well,
Does anybody have a good affirmation that you use around your success?
I just say God's in control.
God's in control. How about you, Donna? Do you use anything
No.
specific?
I'd have to think about it. I've got so many that is. But anytime you have a challenge or anytime you have something, it's when you need to make your affirmation to adjust to that. You've got any kind of limiting belief, that's where you need to write your affirmation.
Well, my coach said not too long ago I was having stinking thinking. And this is when that's going on, because it happens to all of us, and there's nothing we can do sometimes. And like I teased Jana a day or two ago when I saw her, and I said, "There's no affirmation," or whatever it was she said. I'm like, you have to, when that's going on.
Oh, when it's Alzheimer's first.
Yeah, I'm like, you've got to stop that, right? You have to, because if you believe it, it will be true.
Guess what? I had a breakthrough on this chat. I'll share it.
Well, hold on. Yeah, we're on the book club. So let's wrap up. Close out here on the points to remember. You have to examine your beliefs and search for truths and abandon your myths. Other people succeed at high levels, so can you. Just because it's never done and been in your market. What if you were the pioneer and you completely, I mean, what if, right? I just think that thinking bigger thing that Gary does in this part of the book is really something to consider. The time and effort one, yeah, it's hard work, and you have to give it time and you have to give it effort. Those are the ones that stood out, defining your standards and believing and failing forward. It's all about mindset. Anyone else have anything to close out? Anybody up there that's on mute?
Well, I think that you shouldn't think in terms of failure. You should just think in terms of learning and assessing the situation, and that it's a decision and people have a right to that decision. Just go on to the next situation.
Words of wisdom back here. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to close out. Oh, Jana.
So mine, it kind of goes back to bold. You know how they say you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. Normally, a breakdown is, is the sign.
Well, it's when we hit those ceilings, and then we break down and break through.
That's exactly what I just experienced. Only it was more on a personal level, not a business level, but a personal level. And I needed that. God had to bring me to that breakdown, basically, so to bring me to my breakthrough.
And what do you guys think when you have those moments of, I don't know if that's me, as far as a lot of times I'll have agents tell me, well, I'm not going to be a millionaire. I could never, I'd be happy to make this or that or the other. Do you guys believe that is just limited thinking?
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So there goes your myth understandings. Awesome, guys. And I'll post the next reading and we'll move next week into more good stuff.